Recently, we hung out with the Bremont team and founders Nick and Giles English in Portsmouth, UK, as they kicked off another America's Cup event as the official timing partner. As you'll see, Bremont's a different kind of watch company, one that's founded on a passion for all things mechanical and designs that are inspired by history. Nick and Giles are some of the most authentic people in the industry, which we love here at Crown & Caliber. Today, we'll hear more about their story, the motivation behind Bremont's design and high quality standards, as well as a few of the watches that started Nick and Giles' passion.
As we grew up, our father, he was an aeronautical engineer. His idea of heaven was spending time in the workshop, making things. And we just ended up tinkering with old engines, with old clocks, helping my father build old airplanes and restoring old cars. One thing he did was build a boat. He took us off school for a while and we sailed from England to North Africa and around the Mediterranean, and sailing was a big part of our lives as well, especially as a bonding family. One of the things we used to talk about a lot, because it was the pinnacle of the sailing sort of racing circuit back then, was the America's Cup. And it was the time where America had been beaten, the first time ever, by Australia. And if you're into sailing, you're into the engineering, the mechanical side of what's going on. So we grew up with that, and then to be asked to become the timing partner for that is just a dream come true.
When we started, we wanted to create a watch that when you held, if you didn't know anything about us as a business, you'd say, well, for the quality, look at the case hardening, the finish on the movement, the cost tested, the watches being 7 to 8 times harder than the average steel watch, the quality of the bracelet, all of these elements. We wanted someone to pick that up and go, actually, for the price point, it's a really nice watch. And that really has been our driving focus of what we've been doing as a brand.
If you remember the old J-class boats, the boats of the 30s, and later on, we designed a watch which was very much based around the history there, but also a watch which the crew members could bash around. And that's what they're wearing for the whole of America's Cup.
So yeah, every few years we come out with an interesting limited edition, and the first one was a watch built with parts of a very famous Spitfire in, and it all came from a friend of my father's who was restoring a very famous Spitfire, and he had a piece of aluminium about that big from the wing that had flown over Dresden in 1942, and in the Spitfire was this beautiful old Smith's clock. Smith's being one of the last British watch companies, and we saw it and we thought, actually, why don't we build a watch inspired by that original clock, using parts of that Spitfire, and it really put us into a new area, and the demand for that watch on the second-hand market sells for about 4 or 5 times. It's become a bit of a DNA of Bremont as a brand. So we've been amazingly lucky with the partnerships we've worked with. Boeing's 100th anniversary is this year, and we've built this watch called the Boeing 100 with them, as well as a whole Boeing collection of watches. And it's a lovely partnership, and that and companies like Martin Baker, it's a real honour for us. This is Smith's, one of the last British watch companies, but they made a lot of car dials, so our Jaguar watches are all inspired off the Smith's car dials, and this was an aircraft clock out of an old gypsy moth. And when Nick and I are looking at designing, you go into the past, you see what inspires you, and not just clocks, but old aircraft dials, all of these different areas.
You take any mechanical watch, and probably 60–70% of the innovation within a mechanical watch came from British shores, which is a lovely thing. Obviously, Switzerland, by far and away the dominating party in the industry right now. What we're about is trying to make a small difference in terms of bringing back some of that skill set to the UK. Times in our life over the last 10–20 years, we've both been through nasty accidents, and we both understand what it's like to potentially not be here tomorrow. Obviously, there's loads of naysayers out there saying, look, you're mad, you're competing against the Swiss, you're trying to produce something which companies have tried and failed over many generations. And so I think time is short, and you sometimes just think you've got to go off and do it.